Hello, everyone. It's me, Michelle Daniels, your e-facilitator. I'm an educator, speaker, and most of all, I'm a woman of God. I want to thank you for joining me on tonight for e-Bible study. Our topic is Malachi the Prophet. Malachi the Prophet. Malachi is the last minor prophet of the Old Testament. And so we're going to get right into it. I will ask you to please like and share this video with your mom and them so we can get more people on and so we can help reach more people and give them the opportunity to hear the word of God. So we're in the book of Malachi, starting in chapter number 1. Malachi is the author of this book, which has his name. The book was written between 440 and 400 BC. The book of Malachi is an oracle, the word of the Lord to Israel through Malachi. This was God's warning through Malachi to tell the people to turn back to God. As the final book of the Old Testament closes, a pronouncement of God's justice and the promise of his restoration through the coming Messiah is ringing in the ears of the Israelites. 400 years of silence ensures, ending with a similar message from God's next prophet, John the Baptist, proclaiming, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near," found in Matthew chapter 3, verse 2. So some key scriptures are in Malachi chapter 1, verse 6. A son's honor is father, and a servant his master. If I am a father, where is the honor due me? If I am a master, where is the respect due me? Says the Lord Almighty. It is you, O priest, who show contempt for my name. In Malachi chapter 3, verse 6 and 7. I, the Lord, do not change. So you, O descendants of Jacob, are not destroyed. Ever since the time of your forefathers, you have turned away from my decrees and have not kept them. Return to me, and I will return to you, says the Lord. So these are stern words from God to the children of Israel. Malachi wrote the words of the Lord to God's chosen people who had gone astray, especially the priests who had turned from the Lord. The priests were not treating the sacrifices they were to make to God seriously. Animals were blemished and they were being sacrificed even though the law demanded animals to be without defect. And that's found in Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 21. If you go through the book of Deuteronomy, it has all the do's and the don'ts when it comes to God's word. There are 631 laws that the children of Israel are to keep. 631. That's a whole lot of laws, okay? But yet, we see that, the priests who are the leaders, who are in charge, who are to be directing the people, they themselves, are not keeping the law. So if they don't keep the law, the people aren't going to keep the law. It's crazy. But doesn't it sound like today we have people in leadership who don't reverence God's word, who don't keep his law? They do everything under the sun that they're big enough to do because they 3 times 20, 3 times 7 equals 21 and some. And so they do what they want. And they think they're getting away with it because it's not publicized. But how many of you know that God will take what's in the dark and bring it to the light? So shame on you, don't do what thus says the Lord. So we know the law is in Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 21. The men of Judah were dealing with their wives of their youth treacherously and wondering why God would not accept their sacrifices. Also, the people were not tithing as they should be, found in Leviticus chapter 27, verse 30, and also verse 32. But in spite of the people's sin and turning away from God, Malachi reinstates or reiterates God's love for his people, found in Malachi chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. And he promises of the coming Messiah in Malachi chapter 2, verse 17 through 35. So, some practical things that we can get from this book is that God is not pleased when we do not obey his commandments. Uh, he will repay those who disregard those. There's a penalty for sin. The penalty for sin is death. As for God hating divorce, found in chapter 2 of Malachi, verse 16, God takes the covenant of marriage seriously, and he does not want it to be broken. We are to stay true to the spouse of our youth for a lifetime. So I'm going to ask you a question right here, while we're right here. How many times have you been married? And I don't mean with a piece of paper. If we go back to Genesis, where everything got started, Adam said, when he saw the woman, this is flesh of my flesh and bone of my bone, I will call her woman. And then he took her unto himself. They had sex, okay? And they were cemented together. And that was called marriage. They didn't have a piece of paper. God himself didn't come down and speak over them. Adam made a covenant. She agreed. They had sex, and they were cemented together. So, if that's true in Genesis, it applies throughout the whole entire Bible. So, every time you've had sex with a person, you've married them, whether you made a vow or not. Just the very act of your bodies coming together, you know, when I read that for real, and it came to me, I was like, oh my God, how many times I have messed up before you. So, how many times have you been married? And did you stay with the person of your youth? Probably not. And then, of course, you get married, you think you're ready, and then you find out maybe you're not ready, or you find out the other person's not ready. So, divorce. God doesn't want divorce. He does not like divorce. He doesn't hate us when we get divorced, but it is a serious covenant between two people and God. And he wants us to stay true to our spouses. And that is supposed to be for a lifetime. God sees our hearts, so he knows what our intentions are. Nothing can be hidden from him. He will return and he will be the judge. But if we return to him, he will return to us, found in Malachi chapter 3, verse 6. So in Malachi chapter 2, verse 10, the prophet asked, have we not all one Father? Did not one God create us? Why do we profane the covenant of our fathers by breaking faith with one another? Let me read that again. Why do we profane the covenant of our father by breaking faith with one another? The obvious reference in this verse is the covenant made between the Lord and the people of Israel at Mount Sinai. The profane something is to defile it. Profane means something is defiled. So you purposely mess it up, okay? Judah had broken the Mosaic laws, thus profaning it and showing contempt for it, especially the covenant. Because they decided later, okay, we don't want God to be our God. We want a king like all the other. I mean, they just went on and on and on with trying to be like everybody else. When the Israelites were never to be like anybody else. So the Jewish people had one father. And in that, their nation had been created by God, found in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 6. Yet he had become yet they had become faithless to one another. This description likely includes, um, violating the law towards each other, found in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18, as well as unfaithfulness to their marriage relationships. A discussion of marriage and divorce follows in the next verses. And Malachi condemns intermarriage with idolatrous or unbelievers, found in Malachi chapter 2, verse 11. It wasn't referring to races, different races. It was talking about believers and unbelievers, non Jewish people, people that did not believe in the same God that they believed in. Or we would say it, tongue talking, Bible talking, church going, believe in the word of God. And then you go off and marry Sally Sue, who was crazier than, or you marry Boo Boo the fool, and he is doing his thing, and he is not thinking about God. And you think you getting married to them is going to work. It's not going to work. Not if you're a believer, it's not going to work. It's hard enough when you got two believers, but it's surely not going to work when you um, have intermarriage with idolatrous. As well as divorce in general is covered in Malachi chapter 2, verse 11, and also 13, verses 13 through 16. Malachi speaks of mixed marriages between Israel and non-Jewish neighbors. The issue was not racial, as I said, but spiritual. God's people who married idolatrous were also engaging in false worship. So the problem is, at that time, they had all these different gods, little g, Gods. They was worshiping cows and just whatever, the moon, the stars, anything. Okay, they weren't worshiping the true and living God. Today, when you marry someone who is a non-believer, they may not be doing those kind of things, but they make themselves a god. I make my own decisions. I do what I want to do. I don't have to consult God. I don't have to pray about it. I don't have to ask for permission because I'm 7 times 3. I can do what I want. So the Mosaic Law explicitly taught against this. Do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons, or take their daughters for your sons, for they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. So the problem isn't they're not a nice person, is that that person will cause them to do what they're doing. It's very seldom that you pull that person in and they start doing what you are doing, which is serving the true and the living God. And this is found in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 3 through 4, and also in Exodus chapter 34, verses 15 through 16. Idolatry caused the intermarriage was a common problem with Judah. Even King Solomon married those outside of Israel as part of his alliance with other nations, and his heart was turned from the Lord. Solomon was a wise man, but he had all these interracial marriages with these unbelieving countries, and eventually it caused him to stray away from the things of the Lord. Ezra and Nehemiah, contemporaries of Malachi, also recording dealings with such marriages in Ezra chapter 9, verse 2, and Nehemiah chapter 10, verse 30. A New Testament principle regarding marriage also emphasizes being spiritual purity. In 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 14 through 15 teaches, do not be unevenly yoked with unbelievers. What portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? Also found in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 39. So Malachi calls Judah's sin the profaning of their covenant with God. And in breaking their marriage covenants with their spouses, God's people show disrespect to the Mosaic covenant. God's word to Malachi was the same as his word to Joshua centuries before. Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant, which I commanded them to keep. found in Joshua chapter 7, verse 11. Malachi chapter 4, verse 6 says, "Help us recognize there is more to the story and that a prophet will come, turning the hearts of the fathers before the day of the Lord." Because the people of Jesus' time did not accept the Messiah and his kingdom, the Messiah's day was postponed, and John was shown not to be the Messiah in that time. One day in the future, Malachi's prophecy will be fulfilled, and biblical chronologically will move towards its completion. Malachi chapter 3, verse 2 tells us where the phrase refiner's fire is used has been a popular verse in Western society for centuries due to its use of its Handel's famous oratorio Messiah. The verse reads, "But who can endure the day of his coming? Who can stand when he appears? For he will be like a refiner's fire or a launderer's soap." Let's take a look at the prophet's similarities. Malachi says that when the Lord returns, no one will be able to stand before him. The Lord's holiness and judgment will be as a refiner's blazing fire, as a fuller bleaching agent. The idea of standing before the Lord is associated with withstanding or standing up to sinful human flesh will not have the strength, the right, or deserve to resist the Lord in his glory, found in Psalm 7, chapter 76 and verse 7, and Revelation chapter 6, verse 17. The two similarities help clarify why no one will be able to stand in the day of the Lord. First, Malachi in chapter 3, verse 2 says, "The Messiah will be like a refiner's fire," an allusion to the process of purifying metal. A refiner uses a fire to heat metal to a melted state. He skims off the dross, then floats, and then the metal will float to the top. The refiner's fire is, of course, maintained at an extremely high temperature, and such a high temperature of heat is the prophet's picture of the testing people will face on Judgment Day. All judgment has been entrusted to the Son, Jesus Christ, found in John chapter 5, verse 22. And upon Christ's return, the intense flame of God's judgment will purify the earth, removing the dross of sin. Second, the Messiah will be like a launderer's soap. This type of soap was consistent and quite effective in producing bright white clothing. The HCSB translate into cleansing lye. When Christ returns, he will cleanse the world of all impurity. Every stain of sin will be scrubbed away. The account of Jesus' transfiguration contains a reference to his purity, using language similar to Malachi. He was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them, found in Mark chapter 9, verses 2 and 3. The goal of Jesus will be to judge wickedness and purify the people. He will sit as a refiner and purify of silver. He will purify the Levites. He will refine them like gold and silver. Then the Lord will have men who will bring offerings in righteousness, found in Malachi chapter 3, verse 3. Like the refiner's fire, he will burn away the impurities of the priest. Like the launderer's soap, he will wash away their uncleanness, found in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 29, Isaiah chapter 1, verse 25, Jeremiah chapter 6, verses 29 and 30, found in Ezekiel chapter 22, verses 17 through 22, Zechariah chapter 3, verse 5. These are all the other references that you can find to the priest And then when they had to do their duties, they wore white robes. They had to be clean, and they had to be spotless at the time that they went in to do the work for the ministry. And they had to have white robes every day. So those robes had to be washed and cleaned, and whatever blood or whatever got on them had to be removed so that they would be spotless. The priest in the millennial kingdom will then be able to offer sacrifices from a pure heart. The sacrifices in those days will be similar to those when the temple was first built. So in the millennial, we won't have to give burnt sacrifices, but our hearts will have to be pure before God in order for us to stand before Him. The offerings of Judah and Jerusalem will be accepted to the Lord as in the day gone by, as in the former years, found in Malachi chapter 3, verse 4. The refiner's fire and the lavender soap indicate the holiness and the burning judgment of the Messiah when he returns to reign in Jerusalem at his second coming. His purifying brightness and absolute holiness will affect those who serve him, creating a cleansed temple and a purified priesthood. Seeing the sovereign Lord will come with power, and in his arms rules for him. See, his reward is with him, and his recompense and accompanies him. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 10. The phrase the Son of the Righteous appears in Malachi chapter 4, verse 2. But for you who reverence my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with the healing in its wings, and you will go out and leap like calves released from the stalls. This blessing is promised to those who fear the Lord and are ready for his return. Son of Righteousness can also be translated Son of Vindication. The content concerns the day of the Lord, the time when God vindicates his people and judges sin. This vindication will be clear to all, like the bright light of the sun's rise. The one described as the Son of Righteousness can be no other than Jesus Christ himself. The Lord is called the Lord your righteousness in Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 6. After the coming of the Messiah is a picture of a sunrise in several passages. Arise, shine, for the light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 1. You also see it in 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 4, Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 4, and Luke chapter 1, verses 78 through 79. The fact that the Son of Righteousness rises with healing in its wings invokes the picture of the wings of a bird stretched across the sky, offering healing to all those below. A healing effect will infuse the earth during this time, removing the negative impact of past sins, found in Isaiah chapter 30, verse 26, and also chapter 53, verse 5. When Christ returns, God's righteousness and peace will flood the earth in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 9, and Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 14. God's desire has always been to provide righteousness to those who trust him, found in Genesis chapter 15, verse 6. On some occasions, God's people were said to be clothed in righteousness. Job 29, verse 14, Psalms 132, verse 9, Isaiah chapter 61, verse 10, and here in Malachi chapter 4, verse 2. So God's people will see the Son of Righteousness himself rising above the world. It's a picture of the future millennial reign of Jesus Christ. The darkness of the Antichrist reign will vanish, and the light of God will take its place. It's a new day dawning. God's people will reveal and rival in his freedom like galloping calves leaping from their stalls, found in Isaiah chapter 65, verses 17 through 25. Hosea chapter 14, verses 4 through 7. Amos chapter 9, verses 13 through 15. And Zephaniah chapter 3, verses 19 through 20. So we're going to stop right there because next week we're going to take up chapter 3 of Malachi because it leads us into the New Testament prophets, starting with John the Baptist. So join me on next week as we continue Malachi and move into John the Baptist. If you've been watching, my name is Michelle Daniels. I'm your e-facilitator. I'm an educator, speaker, and most of all, I'm a woman of God. Please go to my website should you have any questions or any concerns. You can leave them at my website. That's your-facilitator.com. That's your-facilitator.com. Type in your name, your email, and any questions, comments, any subjects you would like to learn more about. Or if you want me to pray for you and with you, leave your prayer request there, and I will gladly do that as well. I want to speak blessings and peace unto you, and I want to thank you for watching me on this evening. Again, be sure to please like and share this video so we can get more people on, bring up the numbers, and get people reading and participating in the Word of God. Again, blessings and peace. Good night.